So hello, Leo listeners. This week I am joined by another very special guest. I'm all about bringing on guests in 2018. So this week we have Kevin from the Feel Good English podcast, which I hope you have listened to because it's an excellent podcast. And I've brought him on because this month is all about the theme of personal development in listening. So, Kevin, is your microphone okay?
Yeah, I was just making sure it was right up to my face.
Okay. Oh, you can tell you're a podcaster with like,
yeah.
That's the boom. What do you call that? The boom? No, not the boom mount.
This thing here. I don't know. Is this a boom? I'm not sure. It's just like a screen. It's a screen that basically blocks the sounds that come out of my mouth. Yeah.
That's high quality. No, because they're really annoying to get rid of when you edit audio. So that's good. Yeah, that's why I'm referring to that.
I'm glad you noticed my podcast mic. Yes,
I did. Yes, I'm sensitive to these kinds of things. So, Kevin, do you want to tell us a little bit more about yourself and about the podcast to get started?
Sure. Yeah. So my name's Kevin Conwell. I'm American. I currently live in Denver, Colorado. I have been in the English teaching business for more than 10 years, 15 years. I can't keep track anymore. And what I do now is I have a podcast, which are online audio lessons that I produce a couple times a month currently. And I help intermediate to advanced English learners. I help them get to the next level, become more confident, become better speakers through my podcast and lessons that I provide. Well, that's what I hope that I do anyway. That's what the intentions are. And I think it works for some. So yeah, that's the very basic intro about me.
Okay, no, I can say your lessons do work, and they work for me as well, actually. Like, I like listening to them just to get, because you do a lot of summaries of books. So I'm like, ooh, that book sounds interesting. Or, ooh, what's this? And then it's like, oh, I don't have to buy the book because I can just listen to Kevin giving me, the kind of the top line summary.
Sure. Yeah. No, that's cool. That's cool that you hear that. And I've bounced back and forth between providing maybe a general summary of the book versus just choosing one topic or two topics from the book. And lately I've been doing more of one topic from the book simply based on time. I like to try to keep the podcast a little shorter so people can find time in their day to listen to it and also repeat it. But it's kind of tough sometimes just finding one lesson from books that have a lot of ideas. So maybe just the lessons that are most relevant to me and the listeners. So, but yeah, it's growing as a library, as a resource of ways to get at least an idea of what a book might be about. So I'm glad you can listen to it as well.
Oh yeah.
Quick question: as an English speaker, as a native English speaker, do you find it too slowed down or too easy, or does my style of speaking get in the way you enjoying it? Just curious. Listeners might be curious as well.
Okay. I actually, it's funny. I actually find other people's teacher voice really relaxing. Like I really like listening to podcasters. So for example, Jen and Dan from English Across the Pond, I really like the way that they speak when they kind of slow down a little bit, and I like the way that you speak. I honestly find it relaxes me. So it's not it's not a problem. I might skip. I know that sometimes you will kind of do like a little language point section where you talk about some vocabulary from the book. Like I might skip that bit. You'll excuse me for skipping that. But no, otherwise I find it a really useful for getting that kind of top line summary of books, because I'm very wary. Because obviously a lot of the books you talk about, they are non-fiction, they're kind of personal development, like it's the personal development genre, isn't it? So books about, I don't know, motivation, overcoming fears, this kind of thing. And there are a lot of books like that out on the market. And sometimes I'm like, is it really worth buying another book about this topic? Because so much has already been said. So it's really helpful to get that summary and to kind of decide, oh, okay, that's enough for me. Or, oh, this summary sounds really interesting. I'm going to go out and find out more and maybe buy the book.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, and there is, in the general genre would be probably personal development. And sometimes I guess that's a very broad term. Sometimes I find too that the books kind of could be more based on psychology in general or human behavior. That's true. But anyway, yeah, very cool. Very cool to hear. And there are some cool apps and websites these days that do what I do as well. Not for English learners, but they'll take books and they'll summarize them. Blinkist is one that comes to mind, which I've been using for a long time, and it has its value. But yeah, good to hear.
Yeah, okay. And what I really like about the podcast is the way that you're teaching English, but you kind of chose to focus on a particular topic, on something that you're interested in. So psychology, personal development, and all that. Because I've heard you say when you were interviewed elsewhere that in fact language learning, like you're not a natural kind of for language learning, and you've always approached it from like kind of, well, how can I get material that I'm interested in, and then that'll motivate me to learn the language. I think that's your perspective.
I mean, and it's strong. It's a strong aversion to traditional language learning methods that have created this style that I do. So through my own language learning experiences, I realized that not only do I really hate for like sitting in a classroom, learning lists of words, memorizing words, trying to come up with dialogue, starting from the beginning. And language learning is already a challenge, and it's frustrating, and it's not easy, and most people don't just love the process of learning a language. And I definitely also am somebody who doesn't love that. So I never got into that. It never worked well for me. Deep memorization, deep pronunciation training, just a classroom setting in general. So I learned Portuguese to fluency, and Spanish is all right. And I did that through more natural learning, and that was just connecting with good content. Of course, there was in the beginning stages, it's a little harder. You're suffering a little more, but still, I was just connecting with people, asking a lot of questions, experimenting with the language that I did know, finding ways to get over the fear to use the language that I did know, and just kind of putting all of these more natural styles of just absorbing the language, learning the language, practicing with the language. And a big part of that was connecting to content that I found interesting. For example, in Portuguese, there was a podcast that I loved called Café Brazil. Once I was able to communicate, I'd say maybe a year or two into Portuguese learning, and I wasn't doing it intensively. I was kind of taking my time with it. So maybe a low intermediate level, I started listening to this podcast every day and repeating it and just going deep into that, having fun, learning. They had a lot of music in this podcast, and I love music, so that would keep me entertained. And I over a month or two, I really noticed difference in my Portuguese, and I felt stronger, and I felt that it was actually helping me. And I was paying a lot of attention to this because I was teaching English as well. So I said, wow, this is cool. This works. This is helpful. And long story short, that's what made me create my podcast, which is, I think, interesting for some people. It has music in it, and it's a tool that they can use every day or daily to get better and to naturally improve. So I guess overall, I think learning a language can be more graceful than a lot of people make it out to be. Graceful by being smoother process, less stressful, less less of a burden on your day. It doesn't have to interrupt your schedule as much as people think. So if you can integrate English into your day gracefully, then things become much easier. So it's kind of my philosophy behind the whole thing.
Wow. Yeah. So you tried it out on yourself, and you found a technique that worked. Yeah, I like the idea of language learning being graceful. We never really see it described in that way. It seems to be just, it's hard, and you have to memorize everything, and even when you memorize everything, you can't actually communicate anyway. So
right, yeah,
yeah.
That's a good point. And I'm sure you've been there as a teacher. You spend 45 minutes talking about one grammar point with a student, and then in the last 10 minutes you relax and just hang out and talk. And this is actually a very interesting thing that I saw, and that really changed my philosophy as well. So you're teaching a lesson, a very specific grammar point for 45 minutes. Then you relax, you talk for the next 5-10 minutes, and the student makes all the mistakes on that specific grammar point that they did before the lesson. So it's not like you teach the lesson, okay, now I'm going to speak correctly. The student learns it, and then it's good to go. That doesn't really work. It's not. There's not a direct correlation there. So what I found is, not focusing on very specific points for most students works better, and just kind of let them naturally correct their mistakes and just enjoy speaking and learning with maybe some subtle corrections here and there. Teachers can correct, of course, but wasting time on just teaching something specific which doesn't connect, because I don't think it's just an automatic connection once you learn that grammar rule. It's more about how you're used to speaking, so you kind of got to change your habits through speaking. And just another reason that I try to avoid certain types of teaching styles. Yeah,
no, true. I don't think there isn't a direct correlation between teaching and then what the student produces. And I was actually saying the other day, I'm working locally with a couple of students who are sort of pre-intermediate level, and so they're a bit overwhelmed by kind of the whole grammar piece, and we were talking about the S ending in the present simple, he likes, she likes, and I told them this is one of the last things that you acquire automatically, because linguists have studied this, and there are lists, there's data to show that is even at advanced levels, that's something that's still shaky, and it's not because you don't know it. Of course you know it. People have been telling you this rule for years, but it's just that it's your short-term memory that has trouble keeping in mind your verb plus the S ending, and that's why it's something, it just takes a long time to acquire. So you can't get upset about yourself. You just have to know that it's going to come in time.
And that's a great point, and I think that also comes through experience in teaching, and knowing these little intricacies, and not spending a week with intermediate students teaching the S, because it can be just such a waste of time, and in the end, it's not that big a deal. Okay, if you're passing a test, yes, you need to learn that, and students will develop that sound of the S. Okay, I'll use the S, but it's not going to. Nobody's going to misinterpret what you're saying because you didn't add the S on the third person.
Well, that was their question, and I was like, it's not going to affect your communication. And in fact, we were actually working on a podcast together, and so I'm sensitizing them to pronunciation and how things sound. And I said, very often the S ending, you're either not going to hear it, or it's going to sound weird because of the following word. So in fact, nobody pronounces a perfect S or Z at the end of their he, she, third person, form. So, just chill about it.
Yeah, right. Yeah, absolutely. Chill out is a big thing. You can just tell your students, chill out. Hey, chill out. Just chill out,
yeah. I'm going to put you on the spot for a second, because I know that you've studied Czech, the Czech language.
In 2004, and I'm just telling you when it was, because that's why I don't remember any of it.
You don't remember any of it?
I remember Cara, it's amazing how much I've forgotten. As soon as I started learning, I always maintained Czech for a while. And when I lived there, just following the same, and sorry to jump in. I guess I kind of assumed you were going to ask me about my Czech speaking.
Yeah.
Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yeah, because I was like, oh, I'm going to make him speak Czech.
No? So 2003, 2004, I lived in Prague and I studied economics there. And it was just to get out of the U.S., to experience another culture. It was my first experience out of the country. And Prague's a beautiful city. Czech's a very challenging language, not a Latin language-based language, and it's very different. While I was there, and that was actually one of the first discoveries for me of how I hated classroom setting with language. Of course, I tried to learn Czech when I was there, and I was in the classroom, following the same path of being one of the worst students, being embarrassed, not memorizing words when they were telling me to do things, and just kind of falling behind as the weeks went by. However, outside of class, I was interacting more with Czechs than probably a lot of my peers. And so I started creating these friendships, relationships with Czechs. Many of them didn't speak English, so I'd be paying attention to them, trying to communicate, learning phrases, asking the people that did speak English, oh, what's this mean? What did you just say there? And kind of learning more of the street Czech or the modern Czech. And so then I would go back to class and the teacher would ask some questions and I would answer in ways that she wasn't expecting, that all the other students had this predetermined set answer for the question, and I found something that was not. It was more colloquial, kind of just the way that people would speak, and it was correct, absolutely. And the teacher even said once to me, "Wow, where'd you learn that expression? Where'd you learn that?" And I said, "Oh, from my Czech friends." And so then I was like, you know what? There's another way, and I don't need to be stressed, and I don't have to think that if I'm not learning in the classroom in Czech, that's it. So I got pretty good. So that's the point is I got pretty good over a year with not heavy studying, but I was the one out of my friends that could go up to Czechs and ask, get information, go to the train station, buy tickets, or at a bar, if I wanted to meet somebody, I could have a very simple, basic conversation. Felt decent with it. Kept it for a while. I guess it was 2 or 3, probably around 2, 3 years later, I moved to Brazil and started learning Portuguese. Even at that time, I remember I still had some of Czech in my brain. However, after 6 months to a year, I realized that 99.9% of the Czech that I knew totally disappeared.
Had gone.
And it's now I remember jak se máš, how are you? Děkuju, thank you. Pivo, of course, is beer. So very, very minimal. I bet it's in the brain somewhere.
It must be in there somewhere.
Somewhere, but I've heard Czech again, and I didn't understand a thing. But I don't know. Yeah.
Okay. But, well, the only word I know is ahoy, ahoy.
Oh, ahoy! Yeah, sure. Yeah, hi.
So we can say ahoy to we have at least one person watching or in the community who is Czech and another person who is Slovak. So maybe there's more, but I know that for sure there are definitely 2 people from that part of the world.
Those are very, very similar languages. I think so. But yeah, the Czech is gone. 100%. So yeah.
Okay, but I think it's just nice. It's nice though that you were able to learn it in a way that suited you while you were there, and because there's more than one way to learn anything. So
absolutely, great point. Yeah,
even if your teacher tells you otherwise, like okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's funny about Czech. I wanted to do a play on words with Czech, but I'm not gonna do it. Okay. You'll have to check where your Czech is in your brain.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Sure. One day, I will check when I'm
check for
there.
the Czech.
I'll check for the Czech. Yeah. But but like I said, probably not until I'm checking into a hotel in the Czech Republic. And then I'll check for my check. I'll check for my check when I'm checking into a hotel.
Yeah. And then you won't be able to remember anything, and you'll just be like, check, please, and leave.
Good. Yeah. Cool.
Do I win?
You win. Check mark for you.
Oh, okay. We could do play on words with that all day long. Sorry, but we're going to come back to the real focus. So, do you think it's fair to describe you? Would you describe yourself rather as a personal development junkie? So, as someone who's addicted to this kind of thing, or?
That's a great question. Yeah, junkie. You think of I guess junkie is like an addict. Literally, like if somebody's
literally
an
addict,
or something like that. But I guess you could also be like a video game junkie or a music junkie. Yeah. Can be a good thing too, right? Like I'm
passionate about it.
Passionate about it, yeah. And I would say no. I mean, I can stop whenever I want. No, just kidding. That's the first sign of an addict, right? I don't think so. And not that it could be a bad thing, but and I'll explain, I think, what the difference might be. So maybe I used to be, and I know that it exists, and people can get just kind of lost in reading personal development books, and I think there's a specific issue if somebody is reading personal development, listening to personal development, or even following my podcast for a certain reason, and that's if they're looking for easy answers to life, answers answers that'll make them happy all the time, fulfilled all the time. If they're looking for ways to fill something inside of them or to get over their problems quickly without work, that's kind of a trap, and that's what you can get lost in. So a junkie, and maybe, and I might have been like this a little bit before, unintentionally or unknowingly, just kind of whatever I see, if it's a book that looks interesting, a cool title, and it's about how to be happy all the time, or how to have the best friends in the world, or I don't know, like just pick anything up and read it and say, oh, let's figure this out. Here's the answer. Where's the answer I've been looking for? And just kind of searching all through this. So that's not. I don't think that's a very good thing. And I think there's a big market, and it's based on a lot of that. Like, we have the answer to your happiness. So what I do, personal development for me is similar to having a very good, deep conversation with somebody. And if you're sitting at a table having a coffee and they have some very interesting views on life, and it's an interesting, inspiring, and educating, you think, wow, this person knows what they're talking about. So a good book could be like that. You're reading their views on life, and you're taking things, their lives, that you can add to yours. And I think we do this anyway with people that we respect and admire. We take what they do and kind of try to integrate it into our life. So that's what I like about it. And what I do is, well, I have the podcast now, of course, so I'm always having to find good things to talk about. And there's a plethora, a very large range of books out there. But what I do now is I look for tools for specific areas. Like, how do I do this in this area? How do I communicate better in general? Like, not in a foreign language. How do I communicate better? How do I speak better? How do I get my point across more clearly? Which could be used for language learners or not. And that's an example. Or how do I deal with a marriage better? How do I deal with a relationship? What are some ways that I can avoid being stressed in a relationship? Or how can I better serve the person I'm in a relationship with? So there's all types of books on that specific topic. So I think it's tools. So it's tools for life, skills that you can use. And it's just, and I think if you kind of approach it that way too, is what do you want to learn about? What do you need to improve in your life at this moment? You can avoid this junkie trap, or just kind of looking for answers that might not be there. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that totally makes sense. Maybe it's that kind of whole thing of a shiny object. So like, the latest book, it promises whatever, and you're like, ooh, gimme. But yeah, I like the idea of if you come at it with a question, then you're going to be more discerning because you will choose according to what you really need, rather than sort of getting distracted by all the promises out there.
And that's a great point to the shiny object, and even buying books. If you're constantly buying books, you're just creating a library at home of books that you're going to read one day. That's not very good. And I've done that. Believe me, I have books here. But that's actually why I also got into the library. The local library I'd never thought was interesting after, sixth grade. But it's wonderful. It's amazing. It's wonderful, and they have they have almost everything you're looking for.
Right.
They have digital versions. So you can go online and literally check out a book and put it on your Kindle and have it for 3 weeks, which is pretty amazing. So you don't have to be buying all these books, and you kind of should do a little research. What do I want to learn about? What's the best way to do this? Library's a great way. You get a book, read it. If it's not interesting to you, or you just return it. And so don't buy all the books that you see. Don't buy all the shiny cover new books just because it's the newest, coolest thing. For example, this book, this book is a book that I'm going to do an episode on.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's backwards in the video.
No, we'll see in the finished video.
Yeah, the subtle art of not giving a F, right? And so I've wanted to read that for a while. I've read some summaries. I could do a podcast probably on it already.
Yeah.
But I also have seen how many people enjoy the book, and I've really liked the concepts, and it's different. It's different than what I've read. So I went on Amazon. I found a used version,
right,
which is almost brand new, and paid less. And I'm looking forward to reading that book, even though it's shiny on purpose, right? I'm sure they made it bright orange so you couldn't miss it.
But there's been quite a lot of hype, I think, around that one, because I've even seen it in bookshops in France with the French translation. So I think it is a book that's gone kind of big, if you like. But yeah, I'm the same as you now. I try to be discerning because I prefer to read my personal development books or non-fiction books, business books, whatever, in English, because I don't like reading translations. Anyway, a lot of the time, not all the books I want are translated into French, so I can't get them anyway. So yeah, it costs me quite a lot to order them on Amazon in English. So I try to be really discerning and only pick books that I know are really I'm gonna write all over the pages. I'm gonna bookmark the pages because I know that I'm gonna come back to this book and above all that I'm going to implement what's in the book. So now I'm kind of working on. Right. I'm reading less and I'm trying to implement more because I think it's so easy to just accumulate knowledge and go, oh, that's interesting, or oh, I kind of knew that, but if you don't implement, to me it's kind of, what's the point? You're just accumulating knowledge, but you're not actually moving forward.
Yeah, and that's a great point, and I've read somewhere like a percentage of how much you should be careful of how much you consume versus how much you produce. If you're just consuming, not producing anything, it doesn't really get you anywhere. And by produce, I mean putting into action.
Yeah.
Implementing to something like you said, and even if it's one thing from a book that you can implement into your life, then great. Yeah.
Yeah, you don't always need everything. You take what you need and then leave the rest. Okay, so to tie it, sorry, were you going to add something?
Yeah, just last thing on that, and I guess I have read things before, and that's what keeps me interesting, keeps me going. I've read things before that have instantly given my life a benefit. Simple tactics that you read and you're like, wow, that works. I'm trying to think of an example here. I read once in a book, this seems kind of strange, but it as soon as I read it, I was like, well, that makes sense. So making eye contact with somebody. So sometimes it's kind of uncomfortable. And I used to be like, so this is maybe funny. I don't know, maybe other people feel this is when you're looking in somebody's eyes, it's like, what eye do I look at? Do I look in the middle of between their eyes? Do I look what do I look? Do I bounce back between each eye? How do I'm trying to make more eye contact, but where do I look? So I read in this book the importance of eye contact, and they said if you don't know, if you struggle with it, so just choose one eye and just look at one eye.
Okay,
and that's it. And since that point, several years ago, that's exactly what I do, and it works out wonderfully. Nobody ever thinks it's weird. And if you're looking at one eye, believe it or not, you are making eye contact. And so that's a very good point. Very simple, basic thing of how you read something once and it impacts your life forever.
Yeah, straight away. And that is a good example. That is a really good tip. Thanks. That's another book we don't need to read. Perfect.
Yeah, sure. And I don't really remember. So yeah, basically there's the lesson. Thanks for listening to the Feel Good English podcast. Remember, when you're making eye contact with somebody, choose one eye and just look at that one. See you next time.
Yeah. Great.
Maybe I should make a mini episode on that. Good
just
idea.
like a bite-sized, practical tip. Yeah, that would be good. It's good that we came back to the podcast there, because I wanted to kind of tie in with the listening theme. It's kind of a passion of mine, Emily. So do you? Yeah. How do you? So yeah, obviously you read books, but do you have any particular personal development resources that you like listening to?
Yeah, I listen to things a lot more than I read. That's absolutely.
Well, that makes sense for.
Yeah, and it's just so much easier, less time consuming, and adding these things into your day. We stay busy. So yeah, I love podcasts. I've been listening to podcasts for years, and audiobooks sometimes. One thing I love to do is when you're on a road trip driving for a few hours or listening to an audiobook, especially fiction, that's fun. I'm a big fan of fiction as well. I don't read as much as I'd like to, but so yeah, I listen to a lot of like business marketing podcasts. Tim Ferriss podcast is a good one. TED Talks, they have podcasts. I don't listen to them as much as I used to, but TED Talks are great for learners, because they have all those tools, the transcripts, and all those things that you need. And I try to limit my podcast library to just a handful, because like we were talking about earlier, you get that shiny object syndrome, and you end up with 30 podcasts to 30 different shows that you can listen to, and you end up not really listening to any of them. And so kind of tying it back in to what I was talking about earlier is just looking for what you want to learn about and going there and focusing on that. I'll even go into podcasts, the libraries of podcasts, and search topics, a specific topic or a specific person. If I want to, maybe I read a book and I want to learn more about the author, so I'll type in the author and he'll be on a bunch of different shows. So I'll listen to him from different perspectives, different shows. So using podcasts as a library is to search for different subjects.
That's a really, really good tip, actually. I hadn't thought of that. And in fact, like in iTunes, it does kind of, it knows like which ones you're listening to, because I'll go in and I'll see that it hasn't updated a podcast, and iTunes is like, well, you haven't listened to this podcast for weeks, so we've stopped updating it. So it's kind of like your computer and the internet is telling you like, look, you're not listening to it, so we're not going to update it for you. You have to do it manually. Are you really going to listen to this? Like, this is taking up space in your computer, in your library. So, I think it kind of, I like the way that technology kind of helps you as well to be more choosy about what because you're right, it's so tempting to be like, oh, I'm going to follow all these people. They all sound amazing. And then, you've only got
they sit there. iTunes eventually like, no, you're not going to listen to this. And then you say, I'll keep subscribing me, and then a month later, like, hey, come on, like, are you kidding me? Like, you still haven't listened to this. Cara, what about you? Do you have some podcasts that you currently listen to on the regular?
You know what, I've actually changed a little bit recently, because I've been listening to one audiobook in particular. Recently, I've actually listened to it twice in the last couple of weeks, which sounds a bit strange, but
cool.
I I want the lessons to go in. So I've actually been focusing more on that particular book, and it's actually part of a course I was doing. So I've been focusing more on listening to the course materials. So I've kind of taken a pause from podcasts to focus more on that, because again, you can't do everything, unfortunately. You have to choose.
Yeah.
So
Right.
yeah, but I like the idea of kind of reinforcing things that you've read them, like, because I have read the physical book that I in question, and so now I'm listening to it and I'm getting different insights from it, like every time I do that, because I kind of notice things that I didn't notice while reading, but while listening they sort of, I don't know, stand out more. Or
Sure. Yeah, and I think, I mean, yeah, I'm a huge fan of listening. You are too, and with learning, I think it's important. But one thing with audiobooks that I've noticed is it's easy to get distracted, just like reading a book, I think too. But it's easier to just, you're reading I've read, you're reading a page of a book, and then you turn the page and you're like, wait a minute, I didn't even take in one word of that last page.
Yeah.
So you go back, and it's the same thing with audiobooks, podcasts. You get distracted. Repeat that and listen again, and there's no problem with that. And that's the benefit too of audiobooks and podcasts, is you can just listen to them again while you're working out or on the train, bus, whatever. And I think that's also something you have to do, because you will get distracted. Audiobooks are, it's hard to follow along all the time. You see things and you're out and about, and you're not just sitting at a desk listening to the audiobook with your eyes closed, Well, maybe, I don't know, maybe that's how you do it, but it's not how I do it. So, I do, I like them, and I do think they need to be repeated. I think that's very, very important.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
No, I usually, I've been listening kind of like while I'm cooking, but then sometimes like I'll forget to kind of look at my pots are like boiling over or something, because I'm like really focused on the audiobook. So yeah, it's true that whereas with but it is definitely easier than standing in my kitchen with an actual book. And
absolutely.
That's
yeah. Some people do that. I don't know. You see them in cars, buses, trains, just reading in busy areas. I've never been able to do that.
Okay, so audio. At least with audio, you can kind of shut out the sounds around you, so maybe you're more focused on what you're listening to. But it's true that I really like taking notes and writing stuff down. So sometimes if it's an audiobook, it's hard because I'm like, I need to write that, but I don't have a pen because I'm cooking. Yeah. I've got like something else in my hand, and so that's why I also like the physical book.
Do you use Audible, or do you use a certain audiobook app?
I'm considering getting a subscription to Audible, but I'm not. It seems expensive.
It is pricey, and I'm surprised they charge that much. Yeah. It's like $15 a month. Basically, it's $15 a month, which gives you one book. So you're basically buying a book a month, which I guess in the scheme of things isn't that terrible. And they give you bonuses and stuff like that. But yeah, I've done it before and then canceled, and they'll give you benefits if you sign up for 30 days and then you cancel. Say, I'll try it for another month. But the cool thing about it, and you could do this on your phone anyways, you can stop the audio, put in a little quick note on that point in the audio, and then it keeps track of your notes. So that's important. It's important to do. And so that's a good feature.
Oh, I need to I think I need to try it out and just see how I go. I mean, the other audiobooks I was listening to, they were a bonus with a course I bought, so I kind of got them for free essentially. So and there are also lots of free audiobooks, but I find it tends to be literature that's and it's people who are passionate about reading, like not necessarily trained voice actors who are going to like read out Jane Austen or something. So I'm not too sure. So that tends to be the free audiobooks. I'm not too sure what the quality is like, but
yeah, sure. Well, and they're the classics, but there's a term for those books, like I don't know, when they're old classic books that are just open to the public that nobody needs to pay for anymore. There's a legal term for that, but yeah, that's not. Well, it's funny. I in Brazil, in Portuguese, there was a couple of times I bought a book at the bookstore. Somebody gave me a book. Hey, read this, and it was the book was set in the 1800s or something like that in Brazil, and the language was very archaic and old, and And so then I would start asking questions. What is this word here, and how do you use this? And they're like, nobody said that in 100 years, So it's like, so then I put those away. I said, no, I'm going to stop wasting my time with classic literature if I'm trying to learn a language through those. Not going to help much.
No, but I think that's a great way to kind of like double up. And, if you're listening to a podcast, especially if it's an interview podcast, you're going to really hear how people actually speak, how they interact. Your English is really going to develop a lot, and you're also going to get the information that you're looking for on the topic of interest. So for me, it's like that double whammy of the real English plus information that's useful. So. Yeah.
Yeah, and the mistakes we make, and I make mistakes in English. Only because I'm a teacher, maybe I would be embarrassed about that. But you don't. Who cares? Nobody's stopping me and saying, "Oh, you said that wrong. You didn't use the past perfect, or you didn't use the present perfect there." And nobody ever says that. And yes, sometimes I do say. I do make grammar mistakes with verb tenses and stuff like that. It's normal, and in your listener's language, it happens as well. So.
Exactly. It's again another reason not to stress about about English. Sure. Yeah. Actually, so speaking of that, of English, and especially of something like listening, which can be so stressful, like when you have to phone somebody and listen over the phone, or when you're sort of listening to native speakers and thinking, "Oh my God, what are they saying?" I think you can get really discouraged. And also for what I'm interested in, which is helping people understand films and TV series without subtitles. Sometimes you're just like, how am I ever going to understand this? Right. Like, it just feels impossible. So, like, what advice would you give to give our listeners like a boost of kind of motivation and encouragement when they're just feeling like this is never gonna, I'm never gonna understand.
And I think that's great that you focus on that, because somebody has to, because I get emails all the time. People are pretty good. Usually they're in the higher levels and they're like, how do I understand movies and shows and stuff like that? And it's a very real question. What I tell people is if you're understanding films and shows almost completely, then you're at a really high level of English, and you're at one of the higher levels. That's why it's great that you focus on that, because if you get people to that level, they'll conquer English. Some people try to get there too quickly, and they don't realize how hard it is. I mean, I still can watch TV show in Portuguese and miss quite a bit. And I consider myself fluent. I don't have problems with speaking with anyone, and I speak pretty quickly. I don't think and pause and talk, but still, there's just so much culturally connected things in the shows and movies, and things that if you're not from there, you won't catch. Things that are based on things that happened in that country 50 years ago, or TV, culture, media, culturally relevant things that only people from there know, and you're going to miss those things. A name of a actor who died 20 years ago, and they make a joke about him, and if you don't know who the guy is, it's like, oh, I don't understand this part. Well, of course not, because you don't know who that guy was, and you don't have to. So I think it's a process. If you want to get that good, it's a process of constantly absorbing English, listening as much as possible, reading and listening, absorbing as much as you can. And like I recommend always, is you don't have to make lists and memorize everything, because it's hard for a lot of people to do that. The students that I have had that did get really good with that did end up writing phrases, writing expressions, things that they didn't know. They'd write them down and then ask me questions specific, very proactive in their learning to get all of those, to build that library, the database of all of that English. But I think you have to attack it. You have to approach it from a perspective of either I can constantly listen to English, constantly listen to movies, English series, and just kind of over time absorb talking about, and it'll happen over time. Or you can make some slight changes and, let's say, take an episode of a show that you like, and then just attack that, break it down into certain parts, break it down into a few parts, find a transcript, write down what you don't know, learn those expressions and all of that you don't know, go back, watch it again, and just kind of use it as a tool and making this a little lighter. So, maybe you do it for 15 minutes a day and you just watch 5 minutes of the show, or even 4 minutes, three minutes of the show. Sometimes it takes that long if you watch a series like Friends or Big Bang Theory, it's just full of expressions and phrasal verbs and slang, and it's packed because it's trying to be funny too. So they have to play with language a lot. It's not really language that you're going to use, but and you can make those little switches and repeat things. I think if I was going to say anything, I would say, don't watch a show once and then say, why didn't I understand everything? And then move on to the next episode, go back and watch that again. And it's maybe not as fun and as just watching a series, maybe with subtitles and just moving on to the next one, or it's not as fun as just watching it with your own language and your own subtitles in your own language, but it's more fun. It's better repeating an episode of a series that you like 5 times than it is sitting in a classroom trying to learn these expressions from a boring teacher up at the front of the room, in my opinion. So, keep that in mind. So,
no, I think you're not alone in that opinion. And you're right. I think this is where we bump up against some resistance, because people are like, oh, but can't I just watch the show like I would in my language, or just watch it and then watch another one and another one. But it's true, you have to go back. And but it's like what we were saying earlier, with my audiobook, I've been listening to it more than once. I've read the book, and I'm still getting more from it. So there's always more to learn, and there's always value in going back to something and maybe approaching it from a different angle. So maybe the first time you might, learn some new expressions, and then another time you're going to transcribe some bits, and another time you're going to try and figure out the cultural references, maybe by asking a native speaker or something like this. So you can always attack it from different angles. So, but any kind of natural language like that is just so rich, like you say, even in just 20 minutes of a series, there's just... it's a gold mine for English, but it can absolutely. It can be overwhelming. So
and I would also encourage, when people do want to understand movies and series fully, is asking themselves why they want to do that. Maybe they're a little, maybe they're a little confused, and they think that's what they have to do to be able to be confident in a conversation. But it's not true. You can have great conversations with somebody in real life without understanding a full episode of The Big Bang Theory. So asking why I want this, and there's very valid reasons. It's because it shows that you're great and that you understand almost everything, and it's a high level, and you can enjoy series, and you can enjoy all of these English spoken series that are so great. But make sure the person wanting to get there knows why they want to do that, and if they don't. Maybe they're stressed out about it, but unnecessarily. Maybe they don't need to focus on that right now.
Yeah, that's a really great point, because there's nothing. Yeah, you can, again, coming back to what we said earlier, there's tons of ways to kind of achieve the same goal, learn something. So there's absolutely, I'd be very wary of kind of feeling the pressure of, oh, I must do this, otherwise I'll never learn English, and it's just not true. And examining your motivation, because do you want to do that because you want to show off to other people? Do you want, is it really like, I love series and I'm obsessed with them? Or is it kind of, maybe something, I want people to think I'm amazing at English, so I'm going to, it's kind of.
And that's sorry to interrupt, but just before I forget, and I think often people look in the wrong places to boost their confidence. Like, if I do this, I'll become a more confident speaker.
Yeah.
But that doesn't always happen. So if I understand this movie, I'll go out in the streets and find somebody who speaks English and have no problems. I'll be fully confident. But what I believe and what I teach, I think confidence in speaking a foreign language is its own thing. You have to focus on confidence as a separate topic, as a separate subject. And there's ways to build your confidence. There's ways to do that directly, as opposed to looking for other very time-consuming ways that might help you become more confident, but also don't really attack the main issue, which is you are scared and nervous and and whatnot when speaking English. So kind of separating those two things. And I think it's important for people to find ways and to look inside themselves and see, okay, is this a confidence issue? Am I trying to be perfect? Am I trying to cover up my mistakes by learning more and more and more? Well, if I perfect grammar and build my vocabulary to an amazing level, then maybe I'll be confident, but it often doesn't happen that way. And they end up just hiding in the corner anyway, even with all that. So focus on confidence, figure out how to become more confident, how to be okay with being uncomfortable. That's important. That's important.
Okay, that's a brilliant way to kind of close up this interview. And I'm sure
Perfect.
I think I heard a quote earlier this week that confidence is an inside job. So confidence comes from
That's
you.
Great.
Yeah. Right, great. I don't think I didn't invent that. I'm sure I heard it somewhere recently. So confidence is an inside job.
I'm writing that down.
Write it down, yeah.
I like that a lot. Yeah.
Okay, about
it. Stealing that from you.
Talk about that. Well, I stole it from someone, so you can steal it. You can
everything I talk about, I've stolen from somebody, so it's fine.
Okay, that's all right. You can use that for the next episode of the podcast.
Sure. Yeah.
Okay, and I'm gonna put all the links to the podcast, of course, underneath the videos, so people can go check it out. And I'm also gonna link to I love the podcast music, and sometimes I'll just turn that on and just listen to the music on.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah, and now I'm adding the music you made for me to these videos, which is
cool.
Which is really
Very cool.
Yeah, because Kevin made some music for me, so because
I am a house music junkie. So if I'm a junkie of anything, I'm a house music junkie.
House music junkie. Okay.
And actually too, I do have a few of those tracks, and I'm trying to get more of them up on SoundCloud. So if people want to just hear just the music without my voice, you can find that on SoundCloud.
Awesome. I'll link to that. Oh, that's really exciting. You should, definitely get that. Yeah. Put that out.
Sure.
All right.
Yeah.
Okay, Kevin. So thanks again. And confidence is an inside job. Remember?
Perfect.
Okay.
That's key to everything.
All right.
Thanks, Cara.
See ya.
Bye-bye.